I hope you guys all had a nice, wonderful lunch. You all feel refreshed, had a little bit of time to walk around, stretch your legs, digest all that wonderful information that you guys received in the first part of the morning. Thank you again, Dr. Behrman, for that great information to lay the foundation and teach us a little bit more about the prohibition of cannabis and about the medicinal benefits and about the cannabinoids and the different terpenes. That was a great basis for us. And then Sue to inspire us and teach us about how those that are growing older are using cannabis to benefit themselves and just reduce their pain and help themselves fall asleep naturally. Great information. Thank you so much. Now we're ready to move on to the second part of our presentation to get a little bit more into the side of scientific use, the science part of cannabis, about testing. And then we'll also learn about cultivation and sustainability. But before that, we also wanted to give a donation to one of our local organizations. So we're really excited about that. I want to take a moment to acknowledge and support another important organization present today. It's a true honor to be here today to announce and celebrate the partnership between Farmacy and Standing Together to End Sexual Assault, also known as STETSA. So if we could have you come forward with So STETSA has provided an invaluable support and resource to survivors of sexual assault in our community. Since 1974, the impact that they have provided to individuals and families is crucial. In this time, and people that are in need of that have great need, their mission is to prevent the sexual assault, and we're really proud to stand behind them. At Farmacy, we believe in being more than just a local business. We believe in being part of the community, that we should uplift, protect, and empower one another. By standing together, we're able to amplify the awareness that you guys are providing to provide essential resources to those in need. Our continued support of STETSA represents our shared commitment to building a safer, more compassionate environment to everybody. Together, we continue to create a community where healing, support, and empowerment are within reach for all. So thank you so much.
Wow.
Yeah. So generous. So generous.
Thank you, Farmacy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and thank you for all the work that you guys do, especially in this college town, where there's a lot of instances of sexual assault. It's really important the work that you guys do to provide that resource to people, and we're really, really happy to be partners with you guys. So if you want to just give a couple of words.
Thank you so much. This is so generous. I want to say that, over the summer where there aren't as many people here, we don't see as many sexual assaults. And the moment the school clicks in, is on, then those numbers climb. So thank you so much, because this will go a long way in helping us outreach. But I also want to say about Farmacy and the other businesses that are here is that you all have been very generous to us, and that we want to support as a community. We encourage support of businesses like yours, because you have that mindset of not only offering your products to the community, but also of highlighting the vital services that we need in order to function as a healthy and vibrant community.
Right.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can we get one more picture in front of the sign?
Oh, yeah.
In front of the banner? Yeah.
This one?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Don't drop the mic.
We love Farmacy.
Yeah, a second time.
This is good?
Yeah. One
So we
second.
stand
We're gonna go right here. Yeah, you can stand closer. That's fine. Right there. Perfect.
Nice.
Ready?
Good.
Hold on. Perfect.
Awesome. Okay. And that was a wonderful way to start our second part of the presentation. And without further ado, I'm really excited to welcome up our third speaker for our second part of the day, Antonio Frazier. Antonio has been part of the cannabis community for a long time. He used to work with Cannabis. He is a founder there, which was one of the first labs the cannabis community that did a lot of work. Early on, we had some issues with some vitamin E.
Vitamin acetate,
Yeah, being added to the vape cartridges. And some of the students and some younger people were buying them off the black market and, getting sick. And so his lab actually was one of the labs doing their own research, trying to find out what the problem was. And so that's, how Cannabis Safe and He really, got out there early on, was really working towards the safety of cannabis consumers. And so that's, where I first started meeting Antonio and doing a lot of work, educating people, and, where I really thought that he was really special in the work that he was doing. He also now is working, he has his own consulting company, Fire Brands. He also works with the Department of Cannabis Control and their advisory committee. He's just a really special guy, and he just loves to educate people. And so I'm really glad to have him here today. And he's going to talk about how the testing ensures that the products that we get are safe, and how it's really helpful to patients that they can get products that are consistent. And so I'm really glad to have him here today, and he has a wonderful presentation for you guys.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Unless he's a Dodgers fan.
Yeah, so I have a presentation that we'll get set up in a second, and I'll make sure I don't stand in front of it. But I'm Antonio. I'm an engineer by education. I come from nuclear construction, power plants, aerospace manufacturing, and then I found my way to California to start a cannabis testing lab. So my background is a little bit different than some of the other warriors and wisdom that we had earlier today that we much appreciated. But what really, and I love how Sue introduced herself, so I'm going to mimic it and steal it, is that what really got me into this space was in aerospace manufacturing, doing a lot of critical manufacturing work, high compliance, high oversight work. I really wasn't finding joy in what I was doing when as I got older, discovered that a lot of the things I was building were used, I'm in defense, but never thought about it like that way, but they're used in the Middle East and other places and other, to really literally blow up communities. And I really had a hard time with myself, realizing what I was contributing to, that I was so smart, building new technology, helping figure out radars and launching stuff into space. And I was like, holy crap, this is not what I want my legacy to be. So one of my ex-teammates, I played college football in South Carolina, he actually got arrested. He didn't finish. I finished school. He didn't. He finished somewhere else. He got arrested early. We call him. He got his early distribution license in South Carolina. We didn't have him, so it was illegal trapping as he was doing. He reached back out to me like 10 years later and said, "Hey, I'm getting back into cannabis." I'm like, "I have a government job and a kid, dude. Why are you even calling me? Like, you're not gonna use my apartment to ship your packages or bake your brownies anymore." Because I was the homie. Fine, sure. I was probably a little more complicit than I should have been in his original business, but I had moved past that point in my life. But he's like, "No, I want to go on the legal side, and I want your help." He goes, "I want to own a testing lab. Things have to be tested now. You test things." I go, "Bro, I test bombs and engines. Like, I don't test cannabis." He goes, "But you understand ISO. You work directly with governments. I want someone that's going to have a better vision than just doing the requirement of testing. I want a leader, someone I can trust as well to help me do this." So that is how I ended up out in California after about a year of him trying to recruit me. I'll never forget, my now wife said, "Antonio, that kid is so determined. I know he's your teammate. You see him as a kid like you were, but like, he's going to be rich one day. And I don't want the next time he visits us to be on a freaking boat and we missed it." And I was like, "All right, baby, let's go ride." And I will say this, shout out to Europe and Denmark. We had our baby. She had a year of leave paid for. And that allowed us to take that risk to come out here. So if it wasn't for socialism, I wouldn't be here. So you're not going to get me crying about some of that stuff. So anyway, I'll get started here. I'm going to run through the slides. We're going to talk a little bit. We have a conversation. If you have questions in the middle of it, feel free to ask. I'm trying not to be too boring because it is science, but I think the crowd here will be interested to see from this perspective, what does cannabis safety or testing mean for you as a consumer? A little bit of a brand of being here too, but let's dive in. You gonna control it for me?
Yeah.
Okay. First and foremost, what is cannabis safety testing? It's different all across the country, but I'll start with a California-focused view, and then we'll span out to a national view at the end of my presentation. California requires that all legal cannabis products be tested for potency and safety. Potency must then therefore be labeled on the packaging. And unfortunately, that has led to a marketing push for THC content to be one of the focuses of this transaction. And again, I'm not saying that's the reason why I say I think it's laziness from the industry and a bad regulation, so I'm going to blame both sides. But that is the start of why you have such a focus on THC when you go into a store. Licensed distributors or micro business must submit to a licensed lab for testing, and the product must be in final packaging. Final packaging means as given to the consumer. So yes, it's very wasteful packaging-wise. It's probably very wasteful labor-wise that you give me 80, hopefully not 80 vape carts, maybe if you have like a 0.1 gram cart or something. But at times we used to take like 40 or something carts for a half gram disposable, because you have to be able to take them apart and recover at least 8 grams or so to really do the testing required. So yes, it's wasteful, but it's got the best intent for the consumer, ensuring that there's going to be no more processing after we test it. That's the idea. Now, where there's already kind of a hole to step in, bulk flower can be packaged later. So you can send bulk flower to a lab from a big container, turkey bag. I've seen all kind of different things that we sample it from. We take it back to our lab, test it. Then it can be packaged. And we'll talk about later some of the risks to that. But that's the general process of how it must go. If you're not familiar with anything related to sampling, the idea is that the cannabis lab shows up on the table, on the floor somewhere, the entire batch of products or flower should be available for me to randomly sample from. And if I do a good job of randomly sampling, I'm taking from different containers, different levels of it, as well as making sure I get a representative sample for testing, and then go back and run a compliance test. And then finally, you can submit R&D samples for quality control or research. So say you have a batch of cookies. And you just, how did I dose it? Did I hit 10 milligrams? Am I within that? I believe it's 8 to 12 now, if you're targeting for 10, because they wind it to 12% range. But I want to know that before I submit it for testing and quote unquote fail. So you can submit some samples for R&D for knowledge purposes only, but those are not considered compliance. Next slide, please. And what does it mean to me? This is what is required. Potency. This is going to be the THC content. I believe there's THC, CBD are required to be labeled, and we have to test for, it's been a while since I ran a lab. I want to say like 14 cannabinoids, but most labs are like 18 plus. But the requirement is to get an idea of the cannabinoid profile. Pesticides, are there any residual pesticide usage? Residual solvents as well for anything that's been manufactured or processed with any type of solvent material. Moisture and water activity, those are two tests that are more indicators of potential microbial growth in the future. But also, if you're a real savant or you really love your flower, you know that moisture is a big indicator of how well it's cured and how dry the product is. And some people, depending on how you like to smoke, like maybe a little more wet, maybe a little drier, but that's more in the actual preference and quality of it. But there is a scientific reason behind testing for moisture and water activity as well. Microbial, in California, we test for Salmonella, E. coli, and 4 strains of Aspergillus. And then heavy metals, the big 4, lead, cadmium, mercury, and arsenic. Cannabis is a phytoremediator, which means that it pulls all the trash out of the ground when it grows naturally. That's why it's so sensitive what kind of media you grow in, because if you grow in the dirt, whatever's in that dirt is coming with it. And that's why hemp was used after Chernobyl to help clear up some of those metals, and our forefathers used to require people to plant hemp cycles for the same reason as well. So hemp is an amazing product that I don't believe in 2024, I believe we've lost so much of its potential and the focus on it with cannabinoids, but that's a different speech from the material scientists. Let's keep it rolling. What does it look like? If you were, every dispensary legally is required to carry COAs for their products. So if you're lucky enough to find a store that is compliant to this, you can go in and ask for a COA. Well, most people have no idea what a COA is a certificate of analysis. If I'm using too much jargon, please slow me down, or if I'm talking too fast, I am Southern, so I may start rolling. But just slow me down or ask me a question, please. This is what a COA looks like. At least this is the summary page from a recent Lilac Diesel batch from Glass House here. One of my favorite strains, has great cannabinoid diversity to it and terpene profile. recent September 17th. So one thing that I shop on, and I get a lot of budgeters going to send me because they think I'm snooty, I ask for package date. I'm like, hey, when was this thing packaged? I want to know how fresh it is. I know your COA and your packaging must say so, so don't tell me you don't know. This is your summary of cannabinoids here. 24, very reasonable number here. I'm so glad to see this reality sitting here. This is a good taste. And when I first started testing cannabis legally in 2016 we came out here, getting to 20% was like hitting the jackpot for producer. Start legalization, I want to see 25s. About a year into it, if it's not 30 plus, I'm not sending my flower to you. I've seen flower on the shelf at 45%. So you're telling me there's a dry plant material that has 45% oil in it. THC is an oil. So some of these numbers just flat out aren't real, and I'm gonna touch on that later. And again, all the required safety tests here and a nice summary page, because you'll see later it's pretty analytically, pretty data heavy, just to give you an idea. Oh, did it pass for everything? Was everything tested for? Okay. Go to the next page.
I have a quick question on
Yes,
COAs.
please.
I think on Tuesday, the subcommittee, the DCC and Metric calls
Yeah.
is now requiring that retailers, if you're asked for a COA, I don't think it was mandatory before. If somebody asked for a COA, we of course want to show it. It's not easily found, especially if you don't have metric access.
Yeah.
So I think from a retail perspective, we love it because I think from an education standpoint, if a customer comes in and wants to see 15 COAs before they make their decision on what they're going to purchase, we kind of think about it through education, right thing to do, transparency, but then we also think about logistically, like signing into metric, getting the COA.
That would be miserable. Yeah, no, for sure.
So I think there's things like retail ID that are the universal barcodes that could potentially have the COAs baked in there so anybody could see it. Because you're kind of in this world and helping with that, what are your thoughts on this new kind of requirement for retail?
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, there was a lab at one time called Cannabis that Glass House tested with that used to provide you a free QR code for every batch you tested with them, so you can put it on your packaging and eliminate that burden of paperwork and stress. Unfortunately, somehow no one's copied that or figured out that we were successful with it. But I definitely think there's better ways to do so, including, if the state really wants us to use this resource, give people a better user interface for it. Don't make it metric. Have COA somewhere else where you can control it, search for it easier. Or I did see, it's back when I had Cannabis too, I believe there was a rule change saying that did allow QR codes or some kind of digital something to replace the COA physically being there at a point of sale. But for me, I think it'd be great if you had, on every package, or at least the lab or someone provided a QR code to go on the display. That's also something we had. We called it the shelf COA. It was a summary page like the last one, and it had a QR code for the full one. But there's definitely better options out there. I think the issue is that the industry needs to agree on how they want to present the product first before you can really expect a regulatory agency to know what to do. Because I will say this, I'm working on, I won't say both sides, I'm not working with the DCC, but I will say, it's like every other industry, I've been in nuclear, aerospace, all those, your regulators don't really know. They come from a different position. They have all the responsibility, but without the resources, and they don't know. They don't know what you know. I'll just say, I'm sorry, I'm not insulting my guys from the CEO's office or anything like that, but they just don't know the same thing. They have an approach, they have the best intention, but until we work better with them, that's the situation. That's how I see it, at least. As a practical engineer, I just felt like there's not enough communication on both sides for it to work well. And until we get there, you're going to have these kind of silly or
I think you're saying that the intent behind it, the transparency with the consumer.
Exactly.
Be more right on.
Exactly. The intent's there.
There's a technical component and access that takes it out of the consumer's hand and puts it into others with not a clear path to get that information easily. So
I think that's a great
I think it's
description.
the right way to do it, but we just have to figure out the workflow maybe with
So no, agree.
Yeah.
Workflow, no, just like even with testing in final form, I wish there was a more trustworthy way to test in bulk. But then we just recently, one of the biggest producers in the state got fined for having all their cameras magically on their storage off all the time. So, you can't, unfortunately, the regulators are, I can't trust you all to do this the right way to relax some of those things. But I definitely agree there's definitely a middle ground that we're not at right now. Next slide here is the specific part of the pesticide testing part. Most of them have been separated by what we call GC or coordinated pesticides versus LCMS. I won't touch on that unless somebody's really curious, but it's two different techniques for how to read it. I will remind everybody there is no magic instrument, machine, box, or you want to call that test for all pesticides. In order to test for a pesticide, you have to know what you're looking for, set up a method for it, get it validated, and then you can screen for it. There is no test that's going to tell you, we put 5 grams in here and tell me if there's any pesticides in there. So it's very expensive and very labor intensive to be able to do this. And what I like to point out for Glass House is that all of the pesticides are non-detect. So some of these have a limit allowance, but Glass House was one of the first producers we dealt with that usually had all non-detect flour, which meant that there was no concentration of any of the targeted pesticides in their flour. And this one here, microglutinol, was a big one here because it is trade name Eagle 20. Bad news now, when we first started testing cannabis, everything had microglutinol in it, and it can convert to hydrogen cyanide and nitric oxide if heated at high enough temperatures, which are met when you dab and do things with concentrate. So yes, with flour, you may not be breaking microglutinol down to these things, but when you definitely heat that dab rig up to God knows how hot it gets, all these chemicals change.
I was going to say, several years ago, I had a friend of mine that was on the state sort of lab assessment team for cannabis. And he raised the problem that not all of these labs are created equally. In other words, some are little crap. How do you, I mean, you really sound like you know what you're talking about. I don't cut you or anything, because you got a hell of a platform and you know what you're talking about. But how is a determination made, or is it like the sample is sent to 3 or 4 labs and the average is taken? How does that work?
I wish. Unfortunately, right now, it is a business decision. There is no one so for instance, in the world I come from, aerospace and nuclear, you have to hire a third-party sampler, someone with not anything to gain to go collect the sample to make sure it was obtained properly, and then a lab that's either chosen by a regulatory agency or the business to complete it. Here, the biggest issue you have as far as if you're talking about lab legitimacy, one, they have to get licensed and they become ISO accredited. Those are 2 barriers there. Unfortunately, being licensed in California doesn't say that you're a very good lab operator, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a few slides. Ideally, you would do something like you're talking about, averaging 3 values, running at different places. That's just not happening yet in cannabis due to right now there's a bunch of producer pushback saying that will make it too expensive to operate. Right now, unfortunately, a compliance test you can get for cheaper than $400. The same test in environmental costs $2,000 because that's what it really does cost to make. So these labs become in dire financial situations by racing to the bottom to gain clientele, and then they gain clientele at prices that they can't actually sustain. So then they have to keep doing more and more bad stuff, so to speak, or they'd be cheating on data to stay open, and it leads to labs not being created equal or not being very worth a damn, to be quite frank. There's some labs I won't say out loud right now, but I see certain labs on a product in California, I won't even buy it. To be quite frank with you. So yeah, there's no good answer yet, but the DCC is working on increasing lab oversight to make it more trustworthy. Because right now, it's not 100% at all. Next slide. What defines quality flower? I would love to hear from everyone. Who thinks THC is an indicator of flower is good enough? Okay. How about your nose?
Yes.
Smell, right? Okay. How about the bud tender? I just go by what somebody says. Okay. Terpenes. Anybody know what terpenes are? Okay, got a few. And then final packaging. We just like the dope packaging. No, let's be honest. Let's be real with ourselves, right? All these things have been results, and people have commented they believe it. Me personally, I believe number 8 here is the biggest lie of them all. I can give you some 17% strains that will knock you completely out. And also some high potency strains that don't get you as high as the lower ones. These 2 right here are correlated, and what science is starting to come out to say really does indicate the most positive experience. Your nose, the aroma of that plant really does have the best indicator of how you're going to react to the product. And terpenes are a big part of that. There's other compounds as well. So anyone that's really good at this, I know there's a lot of other things there besides terpenes, but those are the main ones that we have available to us in order to make this decision off of. So next slide here. This is The same, well, I didn't change it. This is the lilac diesel. Sorry, this is old presentation. I didn't do my due diligence here, but what's really cool, one thing I'll point out, one is diversity of terpenes. I mean, this is really cool. This is a good, robust profile of terpenes. At high numbers too. 4% is a really juicy flower, and lilac smokes as such. So I see this number, and I don't call it BS because I know this plant, I know this taste. It is very delicious in this profile. I don't even pretend to explain to you. I know what these terpenes mean to me. That's what I tell people. I'm not a doctor. I've done my own R&D. I know what terpenes I like. I know what ratios I like them at, and that's how I shop. You're going to have to find your own relationship to figure out. I can't tell you what terpenes are going to do for you. If anyone does, they're a lot smarter than me, or I would call them a BS doctor. But that's just my opinion. I think everyone has their own personal experience, but obviously you can guide yourself a certain way by knowing the data. And I also use this when I travel, because if I can't get lilac diesel, if I can find terpene profile similar, I'm probably going to have a similar experience and a better chance at it than looking for Gorilla Glue. I can assure you I have tested. My favorite example is I've tested a batch of flour, 50-pound flour, that I turned into 5 different strain names on the shelf. They brought it to me as their internal code. By the time I asked them, it was called 5 different, and they said, Antonio, no one fucking knows. We just call it like they're like no one knows. We don't care, and people are still gonna buy it. So instead of me being out of this, I'm gonna call it that, so someone else keep buying it, because they were more concerned about, I don't know what you call it, shelf. Like they were more concerned about it not being on the shelf. So they just tested the strain, called it the same one, kept it pumping. So, and I've seen that more than just one time. So next one there. This is an edible product to give you an idea what a COA may look like. Just some of the differences here. Edibles are going to be more dosage formulation focused, so you're going to see things about milligrams per serving, per unit is the total package, and then token cannabinoids versus the other things that are important to you. Now, I'm not a doctor, but you have to understand what you're looking for. Right now, very popular on the market right now is something called CBN. I use CBN products at nighttime for sleep. And you see this one has a nice healthy. That's a 20 per unit, so that's a package. I'm not sure how many container though. But I normally go for about a 5 to 10 milligram per piece CBN content when I'm looking for a product. So these are the things you can look for. Obviously, labeling, most of the time the packaging is going to have an indicator of what's in there. But if everyone to verify, this is how you verify. Next slide. I got to speed up. Our hemp products tested too. I hear this all the time. Oh, there's a COA with my hemp product. I buy it online. I get it from the gas station. It's the same thing. Well, I can tell you this. If it has a COA, there's a good chance there's no actual true batch control associated with it. I have worked with CBD companies who test one piece of product and they sell batch after batch after batch with the same COA. So I tell people all the time, look for a batch number on your product and on the COA. The other part about the hemp industry is that there's no oversight or accountability. You don't have the capability to have a recall in CBD. If someone poisons a hemp product, there is no accountability. At least with the DCC, there's some type of system that can trigger you, alert you for your safety and rights to know if something did go wrong and accountability to be placed. The other big issue I have is that half the hemp is just Delta-9 THC. And people are losing their jobs and benefits. Veterans, I've had so many sad stories of people. I just took CBD. I didn't take weed. I'm like, how'd you feel? Well, I felt great when I took it. I said, because you were high. Like, you were fucking high. And I hate that you were misled, but you were high. You failed your drug test, and now you've lost your job, your benefits, whatever it may be, your right to be in the services, whatever it may be, there's consequences for these misleading products. And this is a study this is actually from the National Institute of Justice, is showing you how mislabeled these products were. Black is how many products were labeled hemp. Red is how many were actually marijuana. Wow. So that's just an idea. It's from our government putting this out. This isn't some special interest group. It's our government. So next slide. And this is a little, I'll be quick because I think the industry knows what's going on, but THC has been a big issue for about the last 2 years. People put numbers on jars that don't really match. People misrepresenting what is in the product. And that may not be as harmful as a pesticide, but for a patient or someone, depending on dosage, it can be problematic for them. It can induce anxiety, other things that are unwanted results of a mislabeled product. Also not getting high because it's not really a 35, whatever it may be. And unfortunately, even though the DCC cracked down on this in the beginning of this year, there are some labs that have already started finding new ways to cheat, so to speak. So the DCC mandated in January that everyone use the same method, but people are already finding ways to skirt that in the lab world.
So do you think
Next
that it's gonna start to normalize and come back? Or do you
With
think
oversight, if you enforce on the labs, yes. It takes enforcement regulation. It takes the recalls you're seeing right now and the brand embarrassment and the labs getting shut down. But yes, eventually it will. Eventually. But right now, the industry isn't self-regulating by any means. It's not. It's creeping back up. The numbers are. Next slide. Recent recall activity. I didn't update the actual recalls, but I did update the numbers. There have been 48 recalls in 2024. There were only 8 in the first 6 years of Prop 64. So, and that is where I'm trying to tell people this isn't because all of a sudden cannabis is so dirty all of a sudden. It's the ability for the regulators to actually do their job. Labs are not easy to create. They have 3 labs are supposed to be running, and none of them are running fully. I wish I had the amount of millions that they spent to get their labs up and still aren't up. I wish I could run a business off that kind of funding, but unfortunately they aren't there. More recently, they have come up to speed, and in this year you've seen 11 recalls related to THC inflation, 15 to pesticides, and 22 related to aspergillus or microbial. And this is an idea. If you're signing for DCC's updates, you'll get an email that looks like this, but you can also go to their website and find all the information related to a recall there. And I'll show you that in the next slide. It tells you where it was sold, who the producers are, their licensed business name, their contact numbers, the dates, all the information related to where this product was sold and who made it becomes available publicly for then you to, whether it be, if you had an adverse event, you're supposed to report it, right? Hopefully no one did. But this is the kind of information you will see online. Go to the next slide.
Antonio, is there any data on, like you're saying, was it 48 recalls so far?
Mhm.
Is there any
You
data
can just
on
see
how
it.
many products have they tested and 48 have come back?
It's a great question. There's nothing public.
So that's the part that's always interesting to me. It's a larger number. And
Much larger number. I mean, in my
regulation we should keep seeing that, or we want to see more oversight from the labs. But I'm always really curious if 48 out of 10,000 tests, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, so some of the stuff comes from complaints. People are complaining about products, or whether it be a lab or a consumer or a brand
Articles.
employee. Yeah, some article, LA Times, off the big bombshell that sparked a lot of the pesticide fall after that. But the process takes a while because someone has to report it. DCC has to go find the product on the shelf, test it themselves, then go through all the regulatory requirements legally, take action. My guess is there's probably 40 more already in process, that are still being sold. Unfortunately, I think their big goal right now is to shorten the time between investigation and action, because unfortunately sometimes it's so long, everything gets sold. And that's kind of the other issue. And there's really no punitive because the brand made their money, so they aren't really concerned with, they're only worried. I literally heard people tell me, the recall's from last year. I'm not worried about this. That's up to 18 months ago. So they're not really regulating yet. So people are literally watching it that closely, saying, they're doing stuff, but I'm not worried about it because that stuff's so old. I already sold it all. But that's part of the chase right now what's going on. So here you see more product details. This is the UID number that must be on every package. This long, ugly 1A numbers, metric number there. Packaging this must be on there as well in the batch. These are all things that must be on the packaging to help you verify it, and that's where it was sold for this particular recall. Next slide. And then some people always have to ask me, how are labs cheating? What are they doing? Well, this was a great study put together by Infinite Chemical Analysis to show you that the label claim here in blue, this high number here, their normal way of prepping it, their normal way of processing samples, that's the result. Blue, red is what they get doing it the right way. Then with the adding extra material, so what this is, I prep a 1/4 gram, but I write down 0.2 grams. So I actually deliver more material than I say I did to throw off the analytical calculation to boost THC. 3 gram prep or 0.3 grams, even more material. And it just shows you how you have to forcibly manipulate the weight of the sample just to come close to meeting what's on these label claims. So if a lab is truly producing these numbers, they must be manipulating the flower on the scale this way. They can also do it with dilution. Dilution is, I'm not going into this, but there's other ways to do this. But this just gives you an example with raw data from an honest lab that shows, okay, they said it was here, I got this. I had to manipulate it these different ways to even get closer to what the other lab was doing.
And the numbers can be off by 10% as well, right?
Yes, which is a little bit tighter when you're like dealing with flour. It gets obnoxious when you deal with these concentrates now, like where technically a 92 can be anywhere from like 98 to an 83 or something like that. And that's not very clear to a consumer. Any high-end products have a much tighter window because the numbers are a lot larger there.
And that's
Next
like
slide.
pre-labeling, correct? So that's if you label it before you test it.
So that's the failure. You're right. Yeah, so that's if you pre-label, you have to meet that range in order to keep that same label on.
Post-label has to be exact.
Post-label. Well, actually, it doesn't have to be. Those within 10%. So technically, some people would say, guys, smart, you can get a 25% flour. You can call it 27.
I didn't exact.
Would you? God forbid, you be honest. God forbid, you be honest with your
There's
consumer.
a rule though that if it was after.
So the only reason why you think pre versus post is because of the labor it takes to fix it. It's the only reason why it's a thing. Labeling is just one rule period, whether it's
Yeah,
pre or
because
post.
before we had our distro license, we would package it, pre-label it from our R&D test. Our distro would test it, and if we missed,
You
I
have
would
to
have
go
to have them relabel it all.
Exactly. So that's you think of it that way because of the labor required to fix it,
Yeah.
but technically it's just 10%. You have to have a COA that's within 10% of whatever's in that label.
I like to wait.
I do too. Next slide. And then how can you get involved? So I'm on the DCC's advisory committee. We had a meeting on 9/19 of last month to talk about the cultivation rule changes. There was a recent track and trace subcommittee meeting someone just mentioned, I believe this week as well. I am the chair of the lab subcommittee, where I was last session, and maybe I will be again.
I don't know who else would be.
Maybe I will be again, but I got picked. So, and these are the subcommittees as they stand right now: equity, cultivation, laboratory, public health, community impact, and medicinal use. I believe there was already talks about creating a pesticide subcommittee in our last call, and that's all up to the chair of the advisory committee. I'm not the chair of the whole committee. I did not put my name in the hat for that one. And that's how you get involved. So also on DCC's website, you look up Cannabis Advisory Committee to see when the next meetings are, what the subjects are, and what I would say, this is where the community is going to want to be more involved in. This is safety. This type comes in here too. These are the things that really impact a lot of the patients and the people here that need these products. Next slide. This is something that I want to just share. There'll be a QR code to it later, but a nonprofit that I'm on the board for, Americans for Safe Access, decades-long advocacy work out of DC, really helped us get to where we are, to be quite frank. I'd love for you to learn more about them over time, but they put out this guide yearly, or we do, put out this guide yearly on what's in your cannabis. This is going to take a national landscape, so I'll zoom to go to the next slide. This is the kind of information that you can get out of this kind of out of this handbook. You know, we're talking about the desired therapeutic effects of different cannabinoids, terpenes here, so you can at least have a starting point for if you're looking for something. Again, this isn't saying that this works for everybody the same way. This is just an idea. Okay, this is what some research has found, whether it be from cannabis or from outside of cannabis, that these compounds could be helpful for. Next slide. And then it just reminds people, it tries to give people education. We're talking about safety profiles from known to unknown. We have to remember all our research has been on flower. Like most of the research we have has been on flower, whole plant extracts, like tinctures and things that Sue was talking about. And then when you start going down to like even solvent concentrates, and then especially the chemical concentrates, we haven't really studied that much human use of this stuff. This is more of a race for high potency, high THC stuff. This is more recreational at this point. We can't call this stuff medical the same way because we have no idea what these levels of cannabinoids and things are doing to our bodies over long-term uses. And you get down to synthetic cannabinoids from the hemp market, the Delta 8s, Delta 10s, HHCs, and God knows all those other BS that they're putting out right now. We have no idea how they impact your body. We have absolutely no history of it. So if anyone tries to say, oh, just cannabinoids are safe, we don't know that quite yet. I don't think they are dangerous, but let's be realistic that we don't actually know anything beyond when you start getting past these solventless things. The more things you do to to the plant, the further away we get from where we started. Next slide. More information here about what contamination is, whether it be a pesticide, an additive like vitamin E oil or acetate to cut the oil better for easier filling, PEG, PG. I mean, all these different things that I know people have used, whether it be the black market or early legal market. These are all potential risks to somebody, and they have consequences. A lot of these food-grade terpenes people are putting in vapes to make it taste like cotton candy. That stuff is improved for ingestion. It's not improved for vaporization. And God knows 15% terpenes, we don't know, that's a salt, those are solvents. That's your diffuser. You're smoking your freaking diffuser at this point. I mean, like, you have to really consider what you're doing, and do you want your cannabis to taste like freaking cotton candy? Is it supposed to? You know, you have to really think about these things and realize what you're doing in order to be attractive to whomever your customer may be. Next slide. I'm going to breeze through these because this is a lot of material. Heavy metals, solvents, microbial. There's more information you can go find. Next slide. You know, going to each different type of microbial and what they are, potential health impacts. All this information is available in a free download, which will have the QR code here too shortly. Next slide. More education too. This is for people that could be doing home grows. We try to help everybody out. How do these contaminants come to be? Whether it be cultivation, manufacturing, and storage. A lot of the times, flower you see get called for aspergillus. It's not the cultivation's fault. It's the fact that the dispensary has no protocols or standards for storage right now. I mean, every other industry has strict protocols for how food, drink, or medicine must be stored. I've seen cannabis in outdoor, what do you call it, like the little trailers, like the little units, whatever, no AC, in the middle of California, 100-degree heat in the valley. Like, how are you storing? Like, how can you tell me that's any control to that? You know, you're pretty much begging microbes to grow. Next slide. And this is just a good overview of, again, with National here, just showing you how there's requirements are different everywhere. Not every legal market has the same testing requirements. So California, New York, Florida have some, Colorado are more robust, so you're lucky there. But if you go some places, I think it's Massachusetts, it's backwards. The medical program doesn't have to be tested at all.
Wow.
But the adult use has to be tested, and not even tested to all the same things we do here. So it's not always the same. It's not equitable when you have the same brand, take the state. You have to really know what's going on. And this is obviously focused. This is focused for immunocompromised people. Most people, fortunately like myself, healthy enough.
You're like, I need to
you know, I may not have such a bad reaction to this, but some people can actually die from contaminated products because they're not die from THC, but die from E. coli, die from mold and whatnot. So this stuff is important for the people that helped us get here. This industry was built upon helping sick people. We did not get here by pushing 90% THC vapes. It's not how we got here. So let's all remember that. Next slide, please. And then labeling. Another issue is labeling. Things aren't accurate. Labeling has consequences. Lack of good labels really lead people to have bad adverse events, losing their jobs. Go to the next slide. I'm not gonna read all this right now, but like, you know, whether it be anxiety, nausea, all these things can happen. Failed drug test, like I said, lose your job. Something can be way too strong. You end up, you know, get the DUI for these things. Bad labeling is caused a lot of issue for people that want to come into cannabis, but then they never come back because they expect something and they don't get the same result twice, or they have the first time it's so bad they're just like, I'm never doing this shit. You know, like I'm sure you guys understand, but understand a lot of that and how it works. I think we're done now. Yes, and this is QR codes to some different things ASA is working on. So please take a picture, scan it, go to safeaccessnow.org is our website, and also our website, and then this bad boy is this QR code one I was just showing you from. So yeah, there's resources out there. You don't have to wait for a convention or a meeting like this to learn more about this stuff, the safety. It's all available for you. There's great people out there doing great work. Hope you support them. And yeah, that's all I have for today. Are there any questions, or did I put you to sleep? All right, cool. Well, thank y'all. Thank y'all.
No, it was great. It was like 40 minutes. It was perfect.
Any questions?
Have you heard of the rat source for microbial What are your thoughts on it?
My thought, if you irradiate products, it should be labeled as,
What are your thoughts
irradiated.
using it beforehand as a?
It's just like a prevention technique. I mean,
Prevention.
it's required in some markets, like Canada, I think, or somewhere. It's like required in some markets. I definitely have experienced. I think the taste can be a little different. Like it's definitely affected terpenes, some of the volatile things. I do know, like Rat Source and people have put together all these studies. Oh, terpenes the same before and after. But I do feel like there is a difference. To me, it's more about just making sure people know. Just tell them what it is. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, they'll go find products that aren't. I don't really know enough about, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if dead DNA is the same as I don't know if you turn the DNA to non-viable, so it passes the test, does that make it safe? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think if you tell someone at some point, it went through this process, allows them to make a decision that, okay, there could be dead DNA in here that passed the test. Do I want to pursue? And they talk to their medical professional about that or not. But yeah, my opinion is just transparency. We don't know enough. I feel like I'm too much of an engineer to form an opinion about stuff that I don't really grasp. So maybe one of my faults there. Any other questions? All good? Awesome. Well, thank y'all. Thank y'all for coming too. This is awesome. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Antonio. That was wonderful.
That was such a great wealth of information. Thank you. I want to thank all of our sponsors again. I can't thank all the brands enough that have been here to help make this possible. So I want to thank again like Jetty and Fish Farms and Alien Labs and Connected and Heavy Hitters and Papa and Barkley and Autumn Brands and Plus and Mama Sue. You guys are all wonderful brands that care about the community, and this wouldn't be possible without all of you guys. So thank you so much. I think that we'll just go ahead and move into the next presentation instead of taking a break. I think, everybody has had, ample opportunity to, visit the bathroom. Please, you guys can get up and do so. You want to say something? Yeah, go ahead.
This is not in the program. But you know me, I just go with the flow. I'd like to see, by a show of hands, how many of you know that cannabis is a Schedule I drug, like heroin? How many do not? Let me see that. Let me see the hand. So that's one. Is there only one? Huh?
She said you didn't.
Say it again.
I didn't realize you didn't know that.
Yeah,
She's my sister-in-law, so I thought you knew that.
She's just teasing.
Just teasing.
Most people do not, especially the young people.
Yeah.
They have no clue.
Yeah.
Everybody, you tell these young people cannabis is gonna go away and tell them to Schedule I, and they need to not reschedule, but deschedule, get it off the list.
Yeah.
Everybody you guys meet, tell them that. Ask them if they know the question.
There's an article that was in the Atlantic over 20 years ago, in which Ehrlichman caused a discussion with Nixon. And they decided that since the anti-war folks and the African Americans were enemies, they made heroin and marijuana Schedule I.
I believe that, doctor.
That's how Ehrlichman's done.
And that's knowledge. That's the real. Here you go, babe. Say it again. Exactly.
You know how we got it.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much again, Antonio. We're in applause. Thank you again for all of our speakers that drove from all over to be here. So with that, I'm really excited to bring Hanna Brand up. Hanna is from a local farm here in Santa Barbara County. So we're so excited to have her with us. And she runs a family-owned local farm here called Autumn Brands, which is really amazing. She's going to give us a presentation about what they do there. It's really special. They run a sustainable grown farm, and so she's going to tell us all about it. She's got a wonderful video too, so I'm really excited to learn more about their farm. So
I think I can do it without the microphone. It's a little easier for me. Perfect. Yeah. So I'm Hannah. I'm one of the owners of Autumn Brands. We're a family farm, so it's myself, my dad, my brother, and now his new wife of 2 weeks ago, and then our CFO Autumn. So our name actually comes from Autumn Shelton and the Brands, since that's my last
I
name.
think that's so smart. I've always loved that when I figured that out.
Yeah. We can go to the next one. So yeah, we're located in Carpinteria, actually right next door to one of the glass house facilities over by the polo fields. And it's been, both my parents moved from Holland out here. So my mom moved to Carpinteria when she was 1, and my dad moved to Napomo when he was 18, and then a couple of years later to Carpinteria. And me and my brother grew up working in the flower greenhouses. So we'd be stickering sleeves, sometimes picking flowers. I was more in the warehouse, especially during Mother's Day and all the different flower holidays that were going on. So it was something that was always ingrained in us, like family works together, we farm together. I'm a 6th generation farmer for as far back as my dad could have tracked it, and that comes from a lot of vegetables in Holland, cut flowers in Holland. My grandpa has a lot of great stories, especially when he was younger during the war, and like putting green beans and different things into people's clothing as they were walking back over to Germany. So farming's something that has always been part of my life. And then I actually ended up going over to Cal Poly and getting a degree in agriculture there. We can go to the next slide. I think this is where I talk about myself. Oh yeah. So I got a degree in agriculture and environmental plant science with a concentration in nursery and greenhouse production. Now I focus more on the post-harvest side, and my brother's actually the head grower while he got his degree in ag business. But it really taught me a lot about the different aspects of agriculture, not just within cut flowers or cannabis, but anything from row crop farming to some of the bigger valley farms and trees, a lot of almonds here in California. So I have an array of knowledge in that sense, and then more of personal being in this industry for 6 years, learning while doing kind of on that side in cannabis. My brother is my dad first. My dad is Hans. So as I mentioned, he's a 5th generation. He came out here, met my mom out here at some Dutch little barbecue back in the day. And he really instilled in us that like, if you work hard, if you're honest with people, if you're transparent about what you do, you know, you can make it in agriculture. And it was definitely a harder decision for him to really make to switch to cannabis. Because he grew up in Holland where he saw it more as a gateway drug growing up, and Autumn helped him, and so did we kind of change that perspective and understand the medical effects of it. And really some of our veteran friends that we have in our life kind of opened his horizons to what this plant really is. And we're going to watch a video later. It is an older video. He'll say he never uses the product, but that was in 2019. He does now. Next up, we have my brother, Johnny. As I mentioned, he's also a Cal Poly grad. When he graduated, we had someone come to our farm that was helping us with our IPM program. That's an integrated pest management program. That's when you use pesticides and beneficial insects together to reduce chemicals that you are using and focus more on beneficials, but you still use both of them together. We actually made the transition because Johnny and my dad questioned our advisor and asking about what happens when these things are burned, because we're not buying our lettuce at the market, washing it and eating it. We're buying ours at the pharmacy, taking it home and smoking it. And that's pretty cool to watch him fresh out of college, getting an ag business degree, jumping in with my dad, and then really starting to make huge changes. Because cut flowers, you can spray them all day long as you have the proper PPE and all of the regulations and following your spray programs, because no one's eating your flowers. But with cannabis, it's nice because it's a shorter crop. Gerber daisies would have for 2 years. So you need to keep pest issues down. Cannabis in the flowering stage, I could have in that greenhouse for 7 to 9 weeks because we grow smaller plants. It's a lot easier to mitigate and use other tools besides sprays to solve your issues with pests. And then lastly, we have Autumn Shelton. She is our CFO. So she actually was working for my dad in the cut flower industry. And we brought her in as an equal partner. All of us own 25% of Autumn Brands. Because we needed her expertise in really getting down into the compliance and being part of the county and getting us through the county licensing program. And then also on the state side, we want to be involved and know what's happening with all the regulations change. So she's actually on the CCIA board right now, which has been great for her and for us to really be at tune with things that are changing so rapidly in this industry. And then she's helped a lot with our wellness development. So our new Now Melt line, she really had that idea come to her, and we got to explore that over like a year process of development and everything. And so that's our team. How we got here, I mentioned a little bit. My dad or my family bought the farm in 1986. We grew cut flowers solely up until 2015 when we started transitioning. In 2017, at the end of the year is when we started to transition out of using pesticides and going to a spray-free model. We launched Autumn Brands, the brand, in 2018 when it became recreationally legal. And then being a cannabis brand in California, we rebranded in 2019. We rebranded again in 2022. We launched kind of like a full spectrum at that time vape, what labs were kind of, or manufacturers were offering us to make in 2019. With the vape crisis happening, that was kind of the first collapse of part of the cannabis market, I think, in California. And we decided we're farmers, we're really good at farming, let's kind of stay in our lane that way and not focus on all of these concentrates and vapes and things that we have to rely on other people to manufacture their way. Yeah, so I think I have one more. So we're gonna watch a little video. In this video, CNN was reaching out because we did, they wanted to do an article about Carpinteria Valley, the cut flower community in 2019. And we're like, they started to realize that all of these cut flower farmers have transitioned to cannabis. So it's a little bit different type of flower, but I thought this was kind of a good way, instead of just me talking at you guys this whole time, to really see a little bit into the industry of Carpinteria Valley, into my family a little bit, and Graham's even in here. So we can watch that. Hopefully the volume works. If it doesn't work, I'll just tell you what it is. The flower industry was not going anywhere strong. Something needed to change.
Those farmers were basically on a glide path to bankruptcy until cannabis came along and gave them a lifeline.
In the flower business, we're battling over pennies. And now we're in an industry where they're throwing around $100 bills.
Carpinteria, California is known as America's flower basket. But many of these greenhouses, which used to be filled with tulips and Gerber daisies, are now growing cannabis. Today, there are 106 cannabis operators in Santa Barbara County alone.
So back there is a former flower farm, and those are now all cannabis. On the right, they're pursuing a license for cannabis. That's also former flowers, now cannabis. So in 1985, we moved from Holland. We moved to Carpinteria because we knew some Dutch people in this town. And the rest is history. Look at all this. This is where we bought the farm, yeah. It started with vegetables and strawberries, all types of flowers from first planting.
1989.
Yeah.
As a kid, you run into these flower greenhouses, and it's just rows and rows of color. These are modeling days, Johnny. We get paid for that.
Since I was 10 years old, I was driving around the farm picking up trash. That was my first kind of job, and I picked flowers and I've bunched flowers.
I thought it was always important that they learn this trade.
So skinny.
It's 1990s. At the height of our business, we were moving about 100 million stems a year. The lowest point was the end of 2008. I lost my biggest customers because I couldn't deliver. My kids have gone through Christmases where they did not get presents.
We were very surprised when our dad told us that he was going to start exploring the idea of growing cannabis.
When we started this in 2015 and 2016, it was really hush-hush. In the beginning, we were worried when a helicopter flew over. We knew we had the laws on our side, but still.
The front greenhouse, we kept that flowers as long as possible, but everything else was already switched.
I come out of an industry where we're battling over pennies and half pennies. And now we're in an industry where they're throwing around $100 bills. If you compare the best of years we have had in the flower business, it still doesn't compare what we do today. the growth has been almost doubling every year. Today, I'm an advisor to both my kids.
Johnny has definitely stepped up and filled that head grower position, and then I've kind of been able to step over to more of the branded and sales side. We kind of have a joke that he takes care of the plant while it's alive, and I take care of it once it's dead.
So right now we're in the nursery. So this is where we grow them up big enough to be put into the greenhouse where they produce the flower, and they're remaining here for about 4 to 6 weeks. We have about 40,000 plants, about 20 different varieties. It doesn't stop. It's a big challenge. So this is an RFID tag, license 1318. So that's our nursery license, and this number will stay with the plant through its whole life cycle, all the way into the finished product. I'm hoping that we can take it to the next level, seeing how successful my dad has been in his life and the things he's accomplished.
Our Dutch heritage has always been a big part of us and of us growing. We're 6th generation farmers.
This used to be Gerber daisies.
Yeah, when I was a kid, this greenhouse didn't look very different. We were using the same planting racks, the same size buckets, the same heating pipe, the same everything. We just switched it over to a new plant. Unfortunately, no kids allowed, 21 and over on the farm.
So this is the final step for the Hanna Brand line. It's where we pack everything. I want to do better. You know, you're proud of what your brother, dad, mom is doing, and you be just as good as they are being. From when it was that first clone that you saw to this finished product, it takes around 4 months.
I was not a fan of cannabis, and I don't partake in it, so I rely on my daughter to do that, but it's kind of weird that I can say that. But the biggest difference, of course, is the stigma.
There's a lot of stigma when it comes to using the product and being a gateway drug. We're not the Dutch mafia. We're just farmers, and we're trying to produce the cleanest product we can.
I think it's mostly Dreamwalker, a little bit of chocolate hashberry. You touch one of these kind of lower sugar leaves, they're called, rub them between your fingers, and then you can smell that, and you definitely get notes of chocolate.
Valentine's is 60% of your year in the flower business. If you don't hit it on for Valentine's, you're pretty much treading water, and then you go right into Mother's Day, make it or break it. If you don't hit those 2 holidays, you don't have a good year.
What's left in this warehouse is all of our old machines and our old conveyor belts and things like that. We have a stickering machine. This used to put the stickers onto the those clear sleeves you see on bouquets. Flip one over, sticker, flip one over, sticker.
One of my neighbors that I can see from the house, we saw the lights on really, really late, so we know they're still making bouquets and still pushing for Valentine's. So I remember those days.
The brands are waiting for a new permit to get approved so they can expand their cannabis production. Until then, their last flower greenhouse will remain empty.
Sadly, we won't have any flowers for Valentine's this year. This is sad, because this used to be full of color and flowers, and empty, it's not doing anything. So we're just waiting and holding this space. We tried to make it work for a while. I think I was making $100 to $150 a week in this greenhouse, and I had to buy for $45,000 worth of plants to replant it. So it was going to be really, really difficult to recoup. This happened with the flower industry. This could easily happen with the cannabis industry as well. It could be over, it could change, and we need to search for a new crop. And we're farmers, and we'll find it again, and we'll continue. There you go, Hannah. You get to clean it all up one day. Next year, it'll be full.
2021.
Fingers crossed.
Now. Take a little. That's a little bit about the inside of our operation and into my family story. We were lucky enough to have conforming, not compliant, so we were able to start and continue to grow from the rec side into Hanna Brands before we had our final county licensing. But this greenhouse still has flowers in it, so that's why we had to wait. But it all worked out, and I think we planted it in October 2022. So it took 3 years, not 1 year. We can go to the next slide. That's what I just talked about. So since then, we have had industry crash. I think the price is maybe a third or a quarter of what it was back then. But, you know, we were set up in the mindset that this was going to happen. We saw it happen in other states. It was just kind of a matter of when, because, you know, it's an agriculture product, so we didn't build it like a tech company that we had some crazy IP that no one else had. We knew that everyone else could grow this too. So how can we grow it to really be ourselves? And then increase costs, and then has also been a huge thing since COVID and everything happened. And another way we've changed since then is we have expanded our wellness line, which I can talk about a little bit later. So let's dive into why Autumn Brands. Who are we as a brand? What do we bring to our consumers? So we are 100% spray-free. I think that's the most sustainable thing we could do. One, for the environment, our consumers, our employees. So we never use any type of sprays, no pesticides, no organics, no fungicides. It's a 100% biocontrol program, or also strain selection and environment, which we'll get into later. We use closed loop watering systems. So these are actually the same systems we use for Gerber daisies, but all the drainage we catch and recycle. It goes back into a holding tank, and then we pull straight from our well. We also have a lot of consciously chosen packaging, and we've made a lot of changes over the years to choose better options. We used to have a lot of plastic pre-roll tins or packaging. Now we've gone to tins that are easily recyclable. We've changed from a plastic fake wood looking lid like you saw in the video to actually a backyard compostable lid from Humidity. And then we are women owned and family owned. So Autumn and I own 50% of the company. And then my family owns 75% of the company. So everything we do is really honing back into who we are and what our ethos is. We're fully self-funded still, which is amazing because we get to make decisions based off of how we want to run the company and what products we want to produce out of it, and not based off of what our quarter looks like, which is really healthy, especially for, you know, we say we're small farming, but we're really kind of a medium-sized farm in this industry. So what does pesticide free mean? You know, a lot of people are throwing around different terms about being spray-free or pesticide-free, or different categories of what a harmful pesticide is versus a, you know, an organic safe pesticide. For us, a pesticide is anything that kills a pest. That's what I learned in school. That's what it is. So any type of chemical that kills a pest, whether you're using, you know, an organically made chemical like neem oil or something like Equal 20, which no one should be using. Next slide. So we did go to a no spray farm, which I think is like my 5th time mentioning that. I'm a little repetitive sometimes.
Proud of it.
I am. So we focus on beneficial insects, environmental control, and strain selection. And then this came with a lot of pain points. So there's been times where we had a batch and we were growing it and it went into flower and we finished the whole thing. And we said, this is not going into the consumer market. And we've sent full flower off to manufacturers to extract into, you know, distillate pens that people take THC from, and that's its own story. But we didn't want that flower going out there because either one, it was a strain that was not resistant to powdery mildew. That's a big one. Powdery mildew you do not want on your buds. You do not want to smoke it. 2, if there's a really bad outbreak of, you know, some sort of mite or aphid and the flower is just dwarfed or not going to be able to really produce the quality that we want in our flower jar, we'll send it to manufacturing and they'll extract it for either full spectrum, distillate, all sorts of things. Kind of once it goes there, I don't know where it goes into those places, but it's an option for us where we can still get, you know, trim pricing out of it. Or we've also done it where it goes back into compost. So we do work with Marburg and compost everything from our stems, our fan leaves that we take off. And we've, had to compost flower before. But that's kind of that learning curve, yes.
If I may, I have like a statement and a question.
Yes.
I guess there are 2 questions. I've always been told, I've been reading more about this, that terpenes and I'm not blanking right now, these sticky
trichomes?
Trichomes are natural pesticide defense. Right?
Yeah, so you don't really find that many bugs going into the buds per se, but they'll still damage a lot of the leaves around it or the sugar leaves around it too. So something like Blue Dream actually is an attractant to aphids. We'll find a lot more aphids on strains that have Blue Dream lineage in there. So we grow Blue Dream CBD, and certain times a year, it's really difficult for me to get a batch that I can put into a flower jar.
But it's such a good strain.
So we manufacture.
Yeah, that wasn't where I was going, but that's kind of my question. Like that one that you said, had powder mildew, was it because the strain itself didn't produce the right type of defense? I mean,
that's more genetics and phenotype. So when you breed traditionally, outside of a laboratory, you grow 10 seeds and you go, that one's my favorite because X, Y, Z. You take that and you could cross it again and make more seeds and then go, that's my favorite. And so when nurseries are really breeding in that way, they can go, I'm looking for something that's powdery mildew resistant. The bud structure for what we like isn't giant colas, but more medium size around the flower, around the stems. And then that's what they're breeding for, and you're finding it. There's some strains that have never been bred for powdery mildew resistance, because it is very easily, if you spray for anything, any other pests, your powdery mildew will go away, because putting that little bit on the leaves is adding humidity to your greenhouse, and it'll be gone. Powdery mildew is also gone if you have direct sunlight. So when we have a lot of days of fog, some of my strains that don't really have powdery mildew, I'll see it, and then 3 days later, you'll just see a little discoloration on the leaf because it burned off from the sunlight.
Are you all greenhouse?
All greenhouse, light depth. So everything's grown by the sun. We just have lights in the nursery to trick the photoperiod. Yeah.
Cool.
So that was one question. Did you have a second one?
No, you actually covered that. I was trying to figure out what strains were really resistant to maybe pests, but then you said Blue Dream was actually attractive. That was a cool.
Blue Dream attracts a lot of aphids.
That's really cool.
But luckily we have ladybugs that come in naturally and eat. The larvae eat up to 80 to 100 aphids a day. So now we don't have dead aphids sprayed on our plant. We have aphids that were eaten, and then the ladybugs pulpate, like cocooning, and then they fly around in and out of our greenhouses, and they'll lay their eggs underneath leaves where they can smell an aphid before we can even see them. So, yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Next slide. So beneficial insects, as I just mentioned, California native ladybugs is what we have. We didn't know why they didn't have spots until a professor from UCSB reached out after a video in like 2018, 2019, and said the reason they don't have spots is because they're natives to California. And so the ones that have spots, those are European ladybugs, and those are the ones you could buy for your home grow or commercially in a greenhouse. They have spots because apparently those ones cluster, and California natives don't. But you also can only buy adult ladybugs. You can't buy larvae. Adults eat like 10 to 20 aphids a day. The larvae are the ones that really do most of the work. But they're very picky, and they do everything by smell, apparently, which I didn't know until now, until a couple years ago. And so they'll actually fly in and out of our greenhouses and go, for a while we had some avocados, and then we have all these other plants and, a big hill behind our farm that's a different agriculture. So they'll just travel around and then lay the next generation in. And they're our favorite because they're free and we're Dutch, so. California pests. So these are a type of mite that actually eat spider mites. So these are really small. They come in a bottle and it almost looks like chopped up paper substrate, but it's a little shinier. I don't know what the name of the substrate that they live in is, but we actually sprinkle those in our nursery, and then you can't even see them with your naked eye, but they'll crawl around the plants. If a plant's touching each other, they'll crawl to another plant. So all mites move by just crawling around. And that's why it's so important when you have a spider mite outbreak or even a russet mite outbreak, which there isn't really a beneficial for, is to not be walking down your rows and checking that back row just because you feel like it, because you're getting something on, your shirt, and then you're going into your nursery, and now all of a sudden you just brought a pest from your almost finished crop in the back of your greenhouse to the front, and now it's been produced for another 8-10 weeks and cause issues. So we actually don't de-leaf for this reason. One, so that we don't spread pests, and two, when we did try de-leafing, it actually decreased our population of the free generations, the next generations of beneficial insects we're getting for free from the ones that we had bought in. So it is a little bit different in that way, but for the benefits we're getting versus, some people say you'll get bigger or higher THC flower, we lose a lot more by losing our beneficial insects, not having that environment for them, and then also spreading pests that we're not going to spray for.
Interesting.
Yeah. Colimani is also another one that eats aphids, or not eats. Up on this one, Trichogamma. These help us with our moth issues, which can happen. So caterpillars like to bore into those top beautiful colas, spuds. So these will do the same thing as the Colimani. It'll lay its next generation into a caterpillar. Yes. Caterpillars? Yeah, a lot of if you have, a smaller home grow, you can go through and kill them with your hands. But if you have, an acre of greenhouse, I can't hand kill them. And they'll still be, we still have fluctuations of issues, but we know that we're okay with throwing away some flower. We're okay throwing away buds that have been bored into by caterpillars. We're okay throwing away stuff that just doesn't meet the quality that our consumers have gotten to know and expect, in exchange for making sure that when you're smoking Autumn brands, there's no other chemicals in there changing when it goes into your lungs. Next slide. So another big factor is environmental control. Carpinteria, there's a reason cut flower growers moved there and started there. The mild climate, kind of the hillside of the ocean, you get cooler nights, which makes growing in greenhouses a lot easier. If you're too hot for too long, you can't cool down your greenhouses, your plants will sweat and mold. The amount of sun we get year round here is amazing. Yes, these last few years have been cloudier and rainier, but we still outperform a lot of natural sunlight compared to other places with those cooler nights and moderate temperatures that aren't, I'm okay with a heat wave to 100, for a week, once or twice a year. We can manage that. But if it was 3 months of 110 degrees, it's going to be really hard to grow cannabis or most crops in a greenhouse, because that's going to spike up to where you can't even have employees going inside of the greenhouses. So greenhouse climate, it's very important for not producing mold. So mold can happen when you're fluctuating humidity or temperatures too quickly. That's why it's also good that it's mild here. There's different mildews like powdery mildew that can grow, but you can also reduce powdery mildew by controlling your humidity and your environment, and then just overall plant health. When you have happy plants, you have less pest issues, you have less mold issues, you have less mildew issues. So we're lucky to be in Carpinteria Valley, and I think a lot of people, enjoy living there and growing there, and it makes life a lot easier than some other places. Next slide. Lastly is strain selection, genetics, and phenotypes. So right now, we're growing about 25 to 30 strains regularly that are going into the brand on different rotations, and then we also have about 20 to 25 strains that we're in only R&D process with. This is because if we were to buy 1,000 clones, and that just is, brings in aphids, brings in mites, or isn't strong enough to be in a no spray system, that's really damaging for us. So we start small with buying like 10 to 50 plants and really testing it fully through the system. We cannot grow all strains. There's some strains that people want, but I cannot grow. 1, the climate and Carpinteria. 2, my toolbox is like this big when other people's are this big. Like, strain selection is a tool for us so that we don't have to go and use pesticides or other things that we don't want to use. And then also working closely with our nurseries. We have a few nurseries throughout the state that we use the mostly, and then we'll also experiment with new nurseries, because there's a lot of farmers that have been in this industry longer than we have, that have other knowledge than we have, and they're producing some really amazing strains. And we've worked on some programs where they've only grown them indoor, and they're testing them now with us in greenhouse, and we're kind of leaning on each other to figure out what's right for the Carpinteria Valley, because there's a lot of opportunity for nurseries here since no one breeds really in Carpinteria. Does anyone have any question on those 3 things? Yes.
Are you using any robotics in your operation?
No, we have a foot pedal that has a little bit of air in it to move tables around. Packaging wise, we do have help with packaging. So we have that conveyor belt you saw and labeling. But for the grow side, so we pull from our well and we mix all of our own fertilizers. So we have holding tanks for those. And we have, I think, 6 or 7 different mixes from start of a clone to finish harvesting. Obviously, the last one being just straight water with nothing in it. So that's a little bit of technology, but that was also from the cut flower days. But yeah, there's no robots moving plants or placing them in greenhouses. We've built a little cart where we can roll a table onto our electric cart, roll it off onto this little green cart with wheels and push it to the back of the greenhouse, and then we hand plant them as we go. But we're pretty simple. So neem oil is something I wanted to talk a little bit about. So there has been some growing concern about this in the media, I think a little bit. So people have been doing some more testing and finding that, neem oil is something that's used on most organic produce. It's also used on most cannabis. They're finding that, there's some articles coming out that it can be applied, but it should never be applied when there's actual buds or flower. You should only do it in your vegetative states because you don't want it to stay on your buds. Also, we don't test for its active compound, which is azadirachtin, and it is an active compound that kills almost all pests. It's not all pests, but it's for an organic pesticide, it's very effective in what it needs to do. We obviously don't use it. We stopped using it when we switched, but it is something that I think is primarily out there and people don't call a pesticide because it's more organic setting. And so it's just something that, when you're doing your research and trying to find stuff, see if you can find a farm that talks about it, that says that they don't purposely use it or if they do, that they stop using it after it moves into the flowering greenhouse. Because realistically, we don't have enough data behind it. We know that chemicals change depending on what heat point you put them to. But it's something that we've kind of been researching more or hearing more about when people have been reaching out to us about being pesticide free and if we still use it. But we do not, we don't use anything. It is just kind of that gray area for some people. And then, you can read more about it at the National Pesticide Information Center. And then Canatech today released some articles on responsibly growing with it and different ways to use it as an alternative to traditional, more synthetically made chemicals.
Have you ever had anybody at the lab test for that active ingredient before? What kind of levels, like the visuals?
Yeah, so I have it a little bit later, but Catalyst started doing some Cat 4 testing, I believe. And so I think I need to double check a COA, but
I have one. I'll look at that.
Yeah, the Cat 4 ones that they've been doing. Yeah. But I know he expanded it. I'm not sure the exact amount that they're testing for in Cat 4, but dispensaries are kind of going another step and trying to get more pesticides and residuals into some of their dispensaries. So far, it's just Catalyst, but that's a whole nother beast as well. Next slide. Oh, which I talked about a little bit here. So perfect timing. We were reached out through Catalyst Dispensary because they had some vapes that were pulled off of their shelves due to recall. And they were concerned in the vape world about what chemicals are getting concentrated into their vapes. They ended up testing around, I think, 10 different farms trim. And we were the only one that came up on their Cat 4 testing for no detect for every single external pesticide that they tested besides what's on the normal COAs. So that was pretty exciting.
Flower or
they took our trim because they wanted to purchase trim for a vape pen that they could sell as their own and verify as, being spray free and not having any of this list. So, yeah. We actually get a premium on our trim for a lot of people because they're looking to go to a higher non-detect list, basically, because there's a lot of stuff that are non-detect, but if you're using things that aren't on that list, And then again, the terpene profiles and what you're tasting in your flower, I think, does change when you go to non-spray. But yeah, I don't have. Yes, we do sell bulk still as well. Not everything we produce goes into the brand, but yeah, we work with Right now, we actually do a lot with El Blunto, if you know those blunts,
Oh,
where
yeah,
they
yeah.
have like the full flower ones.
Yeah.
They buy a lot of our smalls currently, and we try to sell mainly to people that directly go into their own brand, so it doesn't get passed around through a lot of distros multiple times. So we work with a few brands around the state that don't have their own farms. Almora, we've worked with in the past. So yeah. Next one. So a little bit more into sustainable farming beyond just the pesticide-free. I talked a bit about the water. My dad built a catch basin on our property, so it collects all the rainwater. We're on a slope, and so it collects all the rainwater, percolates back into the ground, and we have a zero nitrate well. And so there are no nitrates being leaked back into our groundwater. The reason the California Water Board was created was because nitrates leaking and contaminating a lot of things. So it's pretty cool to see. Of course, when we went for county licensing, you know, there's permitting stuff, and we got a green award from the county, but apparently we didn't have the right permit. So we now have a 1 acre restoration project of California natives on our property too. So, and then composting all of our plant material. So we pay Marburg to pick it up. They turn it into different mulches, composts, and then you guys can go buy it as well. We have had stories of people saying that they've had a little cannabis plant spring up, but I only heard about that once. I was like, we have all female plants, so I don't know where that seed came from. Conscious packaging and then conscious product development. So over the years, as I mentioned before, changing to things that are more sustainable, things that aren't just going straight into the landfill. We downsized the size of glass we use from a 40 dram to a 30 dram. We have a home compostable lid from Humidity, and we have tin recyclable pre-rolls now. We do offer 1 Mylar bag option. It's a 7 grams mediums. That is more of a value option where we're taking kind of those medium-sized buds that wouldn't fully be in our bakes jar, a little bit bigger than our smalls line, and then also giving people that are looking to buy a little bit more in bulk, but also not break the bank. They're going in every week for their medicine or their rec reasons, and it's a little bit easier of an option. Those are all made in LA, and the guy that makes them actually comes to my farm and just drops them off himself, so there's no big boat or truck and things like that, which is nice. But yeah, just kind of trying, we know a lot of, everything is so consumer oriented nowadays because that's how people make money, and so trying to find little changes that just makes our footprint smaller is helpful, but what really comes in hand is the business side and how you do business internally and what sustainability methods you're taking there. And so I think from us being spray free, reusing and recycling all of our water, being conscious about our composting, and then also just we don't produce much waste on the farm. It's kind of like packaging boxes and things get recycled or brought to Marburg. So yeah. Anyone have any questions about packaging? Okay. Oh, here's a Humidity lid. So this company is pretty great if you want to look them up on the internet. So it's a PHA, home compostable package. So all you do is peel off the Autumn Brand sticker and you can bury it in your backyard if you wanted to. But it's derived from biosynthetic polymers produced by bacteria nurturing the cost-efficient, effective oils, and it's in the US and Canada. So I am no tech whiz, and I don't even want to try to understand how this is made from the ground up, but they do a lot of great projects and are really trying to bring that standard of why are we using so much dang plastic to look at these other options we have going.
How much more expensive is it to use this kind of packaging than like regular plastic packaging?
So I think I buy these at 25 cents per lid, and before I could buy plastic at like 8 to 12.
It's about like 3 times.
Yeah. But, you know, if I was growing cut flowers, I could never make that change. But, you know, I have a little bit more margin in cannabis to be able to make that change.
Actually do it too.
I think there might be one more slide, isn't it? Oh, stay in touch. I told you one more slide. So yeah, we're on Facebook, Instagram. Our website has that video if you want to share with anyone else or have any other questions. Our info is, or our email is info@autumnbrands.com. If you want to find me, it's Hannah, Hanna, @autumnbrands.com. But yeah, I'll open it up for any more questions, even though I know we answered along the way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Hannah?
You know, it needs to be such a high turnover, probably nobody even bothers to cure their weed.
Yes, we still cure. So we cure from trimming to before it goes into a jar. It's about 14 to 30 days, depending on the strain.
I said it's the most important part.
Yeah. So if I was to trim it and throw it into a jar that day, I don't want you to smell cut grass or hay. So we actually, we hang dry everything. I didn't really go into our processes as much because it was more about sustainability. But when we harvest, we take the whole plant, bring it into the warehouse. We hand hang it, so we cut it down into smaller branches. We let that dry for about 10 to 18 days, depending on the strain. And that's in a controlled room with controlled humidity. We have dehum sucking it out. And then we hand buck everything. We don't have any of those, as they call them, mother buckers, because then you just make a lot of smalls. So we still hand buck everything. And that will take from bucking about a week to get into the trim room. So it starts the curing process there a little bit, but that's not part of the other side. And then we'll hand trim it and separate out all the smalls. The smalls will get tumbled and then hand finished again. And then we'll put them into totes, and they'll be sealed and opened and tossed every day for about 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the strain. And that's pretty much because different strains hold humidity and water activity differently. So sativa that has more airflow and is less dense, might be fully cured in 2 weeks, while something like smackers and indica is so dense that the buds need more time to release all those terpenes and water. Yeah.
Are you giving any gases during the curation process?
Any gases?
Yeah.
What do you mean by gas?
Are you infusing?
No, we do not add anything. No, we don't infuse any terpenes in any of our products or at any step. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, no cotton candy from me. Unless you're buying grapes at Albertsons with me, because those are delicious.
Those are good, yeah. Those are good. Those are good.
But fair, yeah, there's a lot of infused products out there that are infused with extra terpenes and, even pre-rolls and things. And, my warehouse director bought some terpenes and sprayed it at home, and he brought me one. I was like, I'm not smoking that. I know exactly where our flower has been. I do not know where those terpenes came from, and why do I want it to taste like watermelon when I can go eat watermelon? I want my weed to taste and have the effects of what I'm looking for in it. Yes.
So do you grow in organic soil, and can you technically call any flower brand, can you technically call it organic?
So the
Or
word
no, because it's not certified.
So you can get OCal certified. We do not grow in the soil. So we grow hydroponically in coconut core. So those are those 1 gallon pots. They're about this big. We get the coconut core as a byproduct from a coconut milk and meat farm from Sri Lanka. Same pot, same media, same coconut core that we did for Gerber daisies. And so it's just for the right water retention and space and air for the roots to grow. All the nutrients come from the irrigation. Since we are hydroponic with spaghetti tube, every organic fertilizer mix that we've attempted so far has clogged the lines. We're doing another one next year, but right now we can't switch off of our synthetic fertilizers into organics because of how we water currently. So we've tried it twice already. It hasn't worked. They're getting some new irrigation system in one area of the greenhouse next year that we're going to try again. But we are technically not organic. Also, you can still use organic pesticides and be organic. So it is a little bit different. Our CFO, Autumn, is trying to get the DCC to look at a no spray policy, because spray records are public knowledge, and seeing if we can get some sort of certification for being fully no spray. But yeah. I already save money. I don't spray and kill my bugs, and some of my bugs are free. You're irrigating with alkaline water? Yeah, no. Yeah, we're very lucky that, we've owned the property for so long and we have a no nitrate well because of the bioswale. And, yes, when we reintroduce the recycled water, the ECs and stuff are a little bit different because there will still be some fertilizer in there. but we have all that testing equipment. We actually ship every 2 weeks. My brother ships water off to Holland, to one of our labs out in Holland, just little tubes, and they do all the different testing for drainage, the fresh water, and all different 7 stages. So, yeah.
It's really cool. It's nice to have that agriculture like history in your family, you know, and to have all that knowledge to.
Yeah, even though I work more on the business development, post-harvest side, it's like, oh, I know this stuff. I learned it.
Yeah, it runs in
I
your
just don't have to
veins.
do it every day. You guys get to play with the bugs, and I get to play with the buds.
Yeah, there you go. That's one of the things that makes your guys' brand so special, you know? That's cool. And one of the great reasons to, you know, support it.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for inviting me out here. And yeah, reach out if you guys have any other questions or if you want to come to CARP. There is a farm day coming up, I think on the 20th. Oh no, I think it might be in November. I could send you an email, but CARP Growers is doing an open community day. So you can come to Autumn Brands, Crack Stone, Glass House and get a tour. So if you go to the CARP Growers website, I think you can sign up for that. Yeah.
if you guys don't know what CARP Growers is, do you want to tell them a little bit about that, what CARP Growers is?
Yeah, so CARP Growers is all of us growers in Carpinteria coming together during this transition of legalization and county permitting and looking how we can help back in the community, how we can support each other, how we can get legislation through. And so now that kind of people have gotten their business licenses, we still meet every month and work on different projects going on. And then every quarter, we like to open up our farms up to the community to come and check it out. A lot of times, if you just email the farm's website that you want to go to, they'll say, come on over and we'll give you a tour. But these are a great way to join a bunch of other like-minded people that just want to learn.
That's so cool. Thank you. That's
You're
awesome. And I want to also let all of you guys know that just like one block down the street and then turn the corner and it's like literally 50 feet is Farmacy, Isla Vista. So if you want to come and check out Autumn Brands or Heavy Hitters or Papa and Barkley or Alien Labs and Connected or Big Farms or All's Well and Mama Sue, any of the wonderful brands that were here with us today, you can stop by and they have amazing deals, 40% off. You can support these amazing brands and pick up their products. They're all wonderful brands that put a lot of love and care into their products. You've learned a lot about them today, so I definitely recommend that. Even if you don't have a chance to go by today, they're all, you know, always open there for you, and you know that they're a wonderful company that supports their community as well as like all these brands. We've handpicked the best for you guys, so I really hope that you guys have enjoyed today. We've brought you a lot of great information. I forgot to turn the camera around. We've been recording this on Big Marker, which is the program that we use to do our Friends of the Farm lecture series. So if anybody wants a copy of the webinar series, I'll make a piece of paper available so you guys can write down your email and I'll send you guys a copy. I have it in 2 separate webinars. It's not like one long 5-hour one. It's gonna be like probably 1 hour and a half and an hour and a half, so you guys can get a copy of it as well as the presentation. So I hope that you guys have really enjoyed this. I've really enjoyed being with you guys today. There's still some food left, so please take some food as well. And I hope that we'll have another one of these presentations for you guys. Cannabis for Community 2, maybe, have some different speakers to have you guys all back again. I've really had a great time. I've learned a lot about ladybugs and testing and sustainability and medical cannabis and seniors. So I hope that you guys have too. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to having you guys back again.